as part of our Destinations Week, where we do a virtual tour around the world to find out where next for tourism. I'm very pleased now to be joined by Mr. Zul Saeed from Tourism Malaysia. So, Mr. Zul, tell me first of all, what is the situation for travellers wanting to go to and from Malaysia at the moment?
Well, at the moment, international border is still closed. However, diplomats and permanent residents and members of the program under the Malaysia My Second Home, they are allowed to re-enter or enter Malaysia from wherever they are, beginning May 17 onwards. All visitors and foreign nationals, however, are allowed to also leave the country and shall not enter until further notice. Overseas travel by Malaysians is still barred, while the interstate travel has now been allowed to be open beginning the 10th of June. And we are slowly seeing quite a number of domestic travelers traveling outside their place of domain. And tourism-wise, some hotels, resorts, and slowly tourist attractions has begun to reopen following the SOP imposed by the government, and it's a good sign. People have been cooped up for the past 3 months or so, and slowly the local tourism industry is recovering. However, for international travel will still take some time as and when the government decide to reopen the international border.
What does it look like at the moment? I mean, someone has told me August the 31st may be the time when international travel is allowed into Malaysia, because your biggest tourism comes from neighboring countries, comes from Singapore, yes, Brunei, Indonesia,
ASEAN, from the ASEAN region.
Yeah. So those are the countries that you think will be first, the nationals from those countries will be first allowed to come into Malaysia.
Yes, at the moment, there's been some talks, not officially, but suggestion to create some bubbles, travel bubbles. Singapore is looking at Malaysia, and we are also hoping that some other countries where we share common border, Indonesia and perhaps Thailand, and also Brunei, where we have common border by road in particular, are allowed to, slowly to be reopened.
How do you see this pandemic maybe providing an opportunity to reset tourism in Malaysia?
So the way forward, I think people will have to accept the new norm, not just for traveling, but perhaps working, engaging through virtual, and at the same time using the lockdown period and what also any period that they have before they are begin allowed to do business, to look at some kind of training, retraining, skilling, upskilling, looking at new knowledge or exchanging of information and knowledge that they have, not just in tourism but in all segments of business.
And how do you think those kind of changes and the kind of changing world we're in, where, for example, people are not so interested in going into crowded cities, but more interested in nature, how do you think that will affect the kind of tourism that you have in Malaysia in the future?
I think definitely, Rajan, you are right. As we speak, I see a lot of interest now from travelers to look at places that are less crowded. They have this sort of like, I don't want to use the word fear, but anxiety that, because the vaccine has not yet been, identified or found by any of the medical research team globally. So people tend to be wary where they choose to go, especially those with small children and also the elderly. So we in Malaysia, perhaps those that operate in the less commercial area, places off the beaten track, for example, in the highlands, in the resorts area, forest area, national parks, and so forth. But then again, this might also create a little bit of a problem. If everybody were to go to the same place, it will also create crowd. So they need to have the minimum SOP on top of whatever SOP that the place where they are going need
Can I
to
interrupt
also
you? SOP means what? Sorry,
the
SOP.
standard operating procedure, the standard operating procedure in terms of health and safety. That will be the utmost concern now. International tourism outside the neighboring countries, outside the ASEAN region, for mid-haul and perhaps long-haul, it might be later than 31st, it might be later than perhaps end of the year. There are reports mentioning that for long-haul travelers, we might look at some kind of recovery first quarter of next year.
Okay, not until then. Not until then.
Not until then, because you see, we need to know also how the airlines, international airlines, will also recover.
Just finally, Mr. Zun, do you think this actually, in a strange kind of way, offers a chance for tourism in countries like Malaysia to basically change the way they operate forever for the good?
Well, Rajan, nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw this pandemic, COVID-19. You know, we went through several crises in the past. The SARS, the haze, the Coxsackie, but this is totally unprecedented. You know, even small businesses like hair salon and barbers are affected. So, you know, definitely moving forward, everyone will be wary of issues in terms of health and safety, and perhaps teach them not to take the what I call this the little things for granted. For example, like people have always mentioned about keeping cleanliness, being clean, keeping places clean. You see, so and your surrounding environment not to pollute and cause what I call this damage to natural environment. So this is the time I think everyone must seriously look at looking after the natural environment, and globally everyone to look at how to take care of Mother Earth much more better.
This is all. Thank you very much indeed. That's fantastic. Thank you.